So, if we were to ask those 4 questions of the biblical story then, and we could do that, we could go into a little bit more depth on each one. The 4 big questions. Who are we? Where are we? What is wrong? And how is it fixed? Well, who are we? Who are we? Yes, exactly. We're created beings. We've been created by God and we've been created in His image. We've actually been created by God to reflect glory back to Him in His image. We are image bearers, we are creatures, we are glory reflectors, and there's this other role that we've been given. If we want to know who we are actually stewards of this creation that God has made. He's made us, He's made the world for us to live in, the creation, and we are to do that in a way that reflects glory back to Him. That's how we understand what a human is. In fact, you are only truly and fully, completely, richly human when you live like that. To live any other way is less than human. Mark Sayers wrote this great book called The Vertical Self, with the subheading, How Biblical Faith Can Help Us Discover Who We Are in an Age of Self-Obsession. He talks about the vertical self. That's how we've been made. That's how we're actually truly defined by the biblical story. That is, made in God's image to reflect glory back to Him. But he says what we live like, particularly in our Western culture, is that we're horizontally self-defined. In fact, we understand who we are by looking left and right at other people's perceptions of us. That's how we come to understand who we are. Who am I? That depends on who you think I am. That depends on how I feel about how you understand who I am, and so on. In a sense, other people become self-identity mirrors. And it's not just the young people that do this either, is it? I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, can you imagine if you were to come late to a session like this? You come half an hour late and you've got to walk in through that door. When you walk in through that door, are you thinking to yourself, wow, look, there's 20 or 30 of other people who have been made in God's image. How can I celebrate that about them? Is that what you're thinking and feeling? No. How are they thinking of... What are they thinking of me that I'm late? What am I wearing? How are they summing me up based on what I'm wearing? Is my hair okay? Or whatever it might be for you. Blokes, it might be slightly different, but it's still a sense of what are they thinking about me? That's how I'll understand myself in this situation. We've been made vertically, but since the fall, we've been looking left and right to get our understanding of who we are. Sayers says that our sense of others, we do not think of others being created in the image of God. We turn them into mirrors with one purpose to tell us who we are. All right, that's who we are. What about where are we? Well, if we're creatures, we know that we're in a creation, okay? So we're in this, and I realise that the creation is a lot more than just the earth, but it's a shorthand. We're in creation. And if we just pause for a second, though, to ask around the question of, well, if we are in this creation, what's the relationship between the creation and the Creator? Some people will say that the Creator is actually like the most amazing watchmaker, clockmaker. He's made this perfectly designed, perfectly engineered watch with all of the intricate parts completely frictionless and just runs awesomely. He stands back, winds it up, stands back and lets it run through its motions. That's how they see the relationship between Creator and creation. But that's not how the Bible suggests the relationship. The biblical story shows it's much more like, and if I had a ball here, of course I'd do it for you, but spinning a ball on your finger. Yeah? Moment by moment, incremental micro adjustments have to be made left, right, up, down to keep that ball balanced constantly. And even the other hand spinning it from time to time as well. That's much more like how the Bible tells us of the relationship between the Creator and the creation. God is completely and utterly sustained. He's continually creating, in a sense. Your next breath is part of God's continual creating. Your next heartbeat. What we also learn about the creation from Scripture, from the biblical story, is that creation is good. Yeah, after each part, the creation account, God looked at it and said, it is good. At the end, it is very good. So we know that to be true. So I'm going to show you a phrase up on the screen. I want you to tell me what you think when I show that phrase. God's beautiful creation. What's the kind of first thing that comes into your mind when you say that? What are some of the things?
Rainforest. Yep.
Forest? Rainforest or forest? Rainforest, yep.
Rainbow.
Rainbow, yep.
People.
Children, people. Yeah, children laughing. Yeah, good. Sometimes I hear butterflies as well, or waterfalls is often cited. Anything that's kind of to do with nature in a way is one of the first things we tend to think about. So we think about things like this, scenes like this. This is down the Great Ocean Road in Victoria. From Northern Territory, that's Wataka, Kings Canyon. A blue bottle. Flinders Ranges in South Australia. Just on a rock platform, southern New South Wales. No, I didn't take this photo.
Did you take all the others?
Yeah, I took the other ones, but not this one. This is taken by a guy whose job it is, he's got an underwater camera, he lives in Hawaii. He goes out and he takes photos of waves just before they smash him. Nice job. How about that? That one's going to hurt, and this one's going to require some sand taken out of some interesting places.
What a job, eh?
I mean, God's creation, it is beautiful, isn't it? It really is amazing. Look at that. But of course, it doesn't just stop at that kind of normal level that we can see. There's the micro level that's just amazing as well. But of course, we can go up into the cosmos too, and this is a nebulae of some form. It is truly amazing, but it's good, and it does include panda bears and tropical islands and waterfalls and butterflies and things. But what about family? I mean, a baby even is amazing. But what about family, the notion of family? Did we actually invent family? No, it's part of the good of creation that God stood back from and said, that's good. What about justice? Again, is that something that we've just come up with? No, it's part of the good creational essence. Justice is good. Or storytelling through painting or through drama. Does anyone else find that woman a little scary? Or through music. Right? These things are good. They're part of the goodness of this creation. Humour, you mentioned before. The unself-conscious, humorous interchange between two people. Isn't there God's creational goodness as part of that? Or even just the notion that we can actually grow crops, till the land, or even be hunters and gatherers from the good resources of the earth. That's part of God's good creation too, isn't it? Dare I say it, government and leadership is part. We did not invent those ideas. They are part of the good of creation as well. Friendship, even. Sport, competition. The ability to actually enjoy and celebrate and have fun competing against someone. Do some of these things get distorted at times? Have they been affected by the fall? Yes, but that doesn't mean that they're not part. There's not good creational essence there to be found. So maths, dare I say it, even maths, is learning. Learning is a good thing. Technology. Does technology get used for evil ends at times? Yes, of course. But again, the ability that we have as humans to invent and to innovate so that we can better help and serve each other is a good thing. In regards to technology, found this cartoon recently. Caption was, I thought I was onto something, but I can't figure out how to move it. Yeah. So we can say, remember we're talking about where are we? We're in this creation. We can say that God has created the laws of nature, things like gravity and thermodynamics and so forth. But there are these other kind of laws, inverted commas, the laws of living, these norms of life, if you like, that they're less clear. We have to say that there's some good creational essence as part of them as well, like family, leadership and so on. So he is directly creating when it comes to the planets in motion and animal reproduction and so on. But there's a sense of which him indirectly creating through us by entrusting us, or is it blessing us, the ability to innovate and to do justice and to produce art and to love and to learn and to laugh and to lead and to, in a sense, sum all that up, to develop culture in a big sense of the word culture. We could say, in fact, that as Christians, we are actually culture cultivators. It's one of our roles as stewards of the creation, not just stewards of the waterfalls and the butterflies, but stewards of all these other good and rich blessings that we have as well. So who are we? We are caretakers, culture cultivators, stewards of this creation. So the broad scope of creation, yes, it does include the life cycle of a plant, the instincts of a platypus and so on, but it also includes these things that we've mentioned, education, relationships of respect, the arts and so forth. In fact, Walters helpfully says everything that humans are and do is thoroughly creational. Not directly, not by any means, but indirectly as a blessing through God. Now, I'm going to quote from this book a number of times now. It's probably one of my favourite books, Engaging God's World by Cornelius Plantinga. He says this: but God's creation goes beyond the biophysical sphere to include a vast array of cultural possibilities that God folded into human nature. This is the cultural mandate of Genesis 28. God charges humankind to be fruitful and to multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it. And according to a widespread interpretation of this mandate, or is it a blessing, God's good creation includes not only earth and its creatures, but also an array of cultural gifts, such as marriage, family, art, language, commerce, and even in an ideal world, government. So we need to ask the question then of our graduates of our Christian school. Do we want them to just be units of labour, cogs in the industries of our society? Or are we saying, no, more than that, we want them to be disciples of Christ? Yes, but can I say perhaps more than that as well? But to see them as seeing themselves as culture shapers as well, that they have a role to play in God working with them and through them to continue this cultivation of the good, the redeeming of the damage of the good creation. Disciples and stewards. So what is wrong? We've looked at who are we, where are we. So what is wrong with the world? Biblical story tells us very clearly that there is something wrong. I found this cartoon, this image on the internet. Do not climb, play on and around the pipe. Yeah. What's wrong? What's wrong is there's been a rebellion, hasn't there? We have decided to turn our backs on God And we know that from Genesis. To Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. There's a curse that's come. But this passage goes on to talk about the fact that the ground, because of this, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat of it all of the days. Through painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. There's a sense in which the whole of creation has been damaged by that rebellion as well. And again, in Romans, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up until the present time. A sense in which it's not just the relationship between God and his people that was damaged, but the creation is actually, the good of creation has been tainted as well. Plantiga, again, creation speaks out of both sides of its mouth now. It sings and it rings, but it also groans. Yes, the rebellion, the whole creation is catastrophically affected by it. However, and this is really important, and I hope you can see and I hope to make it clear that this is really crucial when we're thinking about offering a Christian education, a Christian view of the world to our students. However, creational goodness still remains. The essence, the good essence of that creation, the good creation is still there. In Plantiga again, badness is twisted goodness, divided goodness. But even after the twisting, the polluting and dividing have happened, the goodness is still there. So just because prostitution exists, just because pornography exists, it doesn't make sex wrong in and of itself, does it? It is a good gift from God. And what about technologies? Some technologies have been used for terrible purposes. For nuclear technology here as the example. Does that mean that us being inventors and innovators and pursuing technological ends is evil, bad? No. There's good creational essence. I mean, the technologies of the pharmaceutical industry, are there distortions to that? Are there problems? Yes, but the good creational essence is still there. Drug abuse, again, another example. Government. Just because there has been some terrible examples of how leadership and governance has been abused, that doesn't actually make government and leadership and so forth wrong in and of itself. Family, the notion of family is in a pretty sorry state in our culture at the moment. Does that mean family is wrong? Should we give up on family? No, we should be redeeming family. Sport can have its ugliness. But does that mean that competition is wrong? No. What about the internet? It's got its problems and issues which that kind of image captures, but that doesn't make it wrong in and of itself. So what is wrong? There's been a rebellion. That has affected everything, but the goodness still remains. That's in a nutshell. So how is it fixed? Remember what we're doing? We're asking those 4 questions, diagnostic questions about the biblical worldview, the biblical story-shaped view of life. How is it fixed? Well, it's fixed by being redeemed. It's fixed by being fixed. And how is it fixed? Well, we know that the gospel of the Lord Jesus is all about redemption and reconciliation. It's about fixing the problem with the rebellion by reconciling God's people to himself. But it's also about fixing the damage, the distortion, the disintegration of the creation as well. We know that the gospel of Christ is actually cosmic, just as the rebellion was. So, the scope of the rebellion in Colossians 1 talks about Jesus being coming to reconcile to himself all things. And that passage is all things, all things, all things. It repeats it a number of times. Not just his people. 2 Corinthians 5 says this, all this is from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. What's the ministry of reconciliation? Well, Colossians says Jesus came to reconcile himself to all things. So the ministry of reconciliation is about this redeeming and reconciling of all things. So some of the implication then is, well, marriage should be sanctified and not avoided or abandoned because it's got problems. Emotions should be purified and not repressed. Sexuality, problem sexuality should be redeemed and not shunned. Politics should be reformed and not decreed off limits for students. Don't go suggesting to any of your students, any of your children, that politics is a dirty world. Don't go into it. No, we need Christians in politics. Art should be claimed for Christ and not proclaimed worldly just because it's secular. At their best, Reformed Christians take a very big view of redemption because they take a very big view of fallenness. If all has been created good and all has been corrupted, then all must be redeemed. The whole world belongs to God. The whole world has fallen, and so the whole world needs to be redeemed. Every last person, place, organisation and program, all the rocks and trees and skies and seas, in fact, every square inch, as Abraham Kuyper said. So again, our graduates. What do we want our graduates to be when they leave us, our time with us? Culture shapers? Or ... What are they if they're not culture shapers? What's the only other alternative? They're being shaped by culture. You want them to go and be out there. They could be pious, warm-hearted people, but they could be being shaped by their culture. Or do we want our graduates to be culture shapers, seeing this big picture plan, this big picture purpose that God has to redeem all things and being a part of it, desiring to be a part of it? Planty goes on to say, the point of all this learning is to prepare to add one's own contribution to the supreme Reformation project, which is God's restoration of all the things that have been corrupted by evil.